Superheroes without powers? What's so super about that? In some ways, I actually think this makes a hero even more super, assuming they can get the job done, of course. Katana is known for being one of the best martial artists over at DC Comics. She is considered a master martial artist and is also extremely skilled in swordsmanship. Typically, she wields a katana, the sword she was trained in and gets her codename from. Her katana is also special, being known as the Soul Taker. It claims the soul of whoever it slays, and she carries it because her husband's soul is actually trapped within it. Sometimes her sword is therefore able to help her in ways that appear mystical, but really Katana herself is not powered. She simply carries a cursed weapon. Next up, Hawkeye. Hawkeye is one of the most gifted marksmen we have in the comics. He is Clint Barton, a man who is known for being a crack shot with a bow and arrow, but has also been shown across multiple stories and realities to be a crack shot with almost any projectile that you put in his hands. It was implied at one point that Clint was so good at this because he had supervision, but I've really only seen it come up once in the comics during Civil War II, and at the time I read it, I kind of chuckled a bit at the idea. In fact, it's not even called supervision, I believe, in the comic. It's just said that he can see really well. His sight was so good that he was able to see Bruce about to Hulk out while basically staked out in a tree far away from him, but seeing a change in Bruce's eyes. Yeah, I don't know about that. However, I would believe that Hawkeye's sense of sight, smell, taste, and touch are somewhat enhanced, considering he is often depicted as being mostly deaf. Blue Beetle is another smarty pants in the superhero community, and that's really where his strength comes from as a hero. At least that is how it is for Blue Beetle Ted Kord. Ted Kord is a super genius and built his own Blue Beetle suit from scratch. His successor in the mantle, Jamie Reyes, is also super smart but isn't necessarily a tech whiz, and his suit resembles a beetle as well, but really it's just alien tech. Both rely on their suits a lot to be heroes, and both do a pretty good job of beating up baddies thanks to their suits. Batgirl hails from the Bat family, which makes her one of the most powerful non-powered superheroes in the DC universe. I thought about putting Nightwing on here instead, but I decided against that when I considered that while Nightwing is super intelligent in his own way, especially in a crime lab, Babs has the added bonus of not just being a skilled crime fighter in a physical and strategic sense, but also of having been the person working behind the scenes in her capacity as Oracle. She's also a master hacker. Also, I talk about Nightwing a lot, so I figured it was time to let Babs shine for a bit, hence why she's included here. But let me know, who is your favorite member of the Bat family, and why do you think they're so powerful? What makes them so powerful? Shang-Chi is one of my all-time favorites in the comics when it comes to non-powered heroes. I honestly started to research Shang-Chi when the MCU film Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings was announced, and the more I looked into this character, the more I found there that I really liked. Shang-Chi is a master martial artist who is the son of a villain, who we'd later come to know over time as Zhang Zhu. Currently, his dad is dead in the comics and has been since 2011. We probably won't be seeing him again anytime soon, so for better and for worse. But a lot of the conflict in Shang-Chi's life actually came from his relationship with his dad. Growing up, Shang-Chi lived a very sheltered life and was unaware of his father's role in the world. However, when he was sent out on his first mission, he came to know the truth about his father and finally saw him for the first time as the villain the rest of the world knew him to be. Shang-Chi was faced with a choice: accept this and remain the heir to one of the most powerful and influential men in the world, or leave the only home he'd ever known and give it all up, but rest somewhat easier in regards to his conscience. He chose, of course, the latter, becoming a hero. Shang-Chi is a studied philosopher and insanely skilled martial artist, having been trained since birth. He's actually considered to be one of the best martial artists in the world, and has even learned to tap into his chi, or ki, in a way that makes him sometimes seem superpowered. Though really, chi is available to all to channel, Shang-Chi just knows how to tap into it better than most others. Currently in the comics, likely to reflect his MCU counterpart, Shang-Chi is armed with the 10 rings. But even still, while these do grant him powers, the powers still belong to the item ultimately, not Shang-Chi himself. Also, I personally like Shang-Chi without the 10 rings. That might be a weird thing to say, but hey, I like classic Shang-Chi. He's great too. Some might argue that Iron Fist has powers because he is given the mystical ability of the Iron Fist, but he does also have to kill a dragon to achieve this, so yeah. Or, be given the strength of said dragon Xiao Lao by choice, as seen with the latest person to take up the mantle. Lin Lai lay dying when the reincarnation of Xiao Lao hatched and chose to save Lin's life by granting him the power of the Iron Fist. At the end of the day though, the power of the Iron Fist is still something you must earn in a way, so I suppose because of that, I don't often see it as a superpower. It's more like the most powerful martial arts ability that you can unlock, but like I said, you still have to earn it, and typically when one does this, they are still very much just a person who is good at martial arts. Although if you wanted to get technical, Danny is just Danny right now, but he's still a superhero who you would not want to come across, as he's one of the most powerful martial artists in the whole world. At least you wouldn't want to come across him if you were a villain. If you're also good, then I'm sure it'd be fine. Danny would probably just fist bump you. When it comes to street level heroes, this next one takes the cake as one of the best and also just honestly one of the coolest. We're talking about Moon Knight. I feel like Moon Knight is often highly underrated, which is also wild when you consider we're in a time when Moon Knight is crushing it in the comic world. Well, not in terms of what he's doing, as he did just die, but more in terms of his series and how well produced and written both have been. Shout out to Alessandro Cappuccio and Jed MacKay. MacKay in general has just been like on fire lately in the comic book world, and if you haven't read Moon Knight or Vengeance of the Moon Knight, you should check those out. Just do yourself a favor. It's a good time. Green Arrow is basically DC's version of Hawkeye, who we talked about earlier on. Or rather, Hawkeye is like Marvel's version of Green Arrow, I should say, since Oliver Queen came first, debuting in the 1940s, whereas Clint wouldn't show up until the 1960s in the comics. Not to say that just because Ollie appeared earlier, he's better than Clint, as obviously I've put him a lot higher on this list, but I would say that in terms of comic book marksman, Green Arrow has made more of a name for himself than Hawkeye has, whether that is because Queen has been around for longer or been considered more popular and therefore has done more while being more prominently featured. It's a little harder to say. It's probably a combination of both of those things though. Green Arrow is considered to be one of the greatest marksmen on the planet, and has also been implied to be a rival marksman even beyond the planet's boundaries, with him taking some pretty cosmic shots here and there. Usually he gets a bit of an assist. He's gotten an assist before from Green Lantern, but still, it's impressive. Iron Man is one that I always forget about when it comes to lists like these. I don't know why that is. When I first sit down and start brainstorming about who I want to be on my list, Iron Man just always seems to like slip through my mind. Now, I'm not a big Iron Man fan, so I mean, that could be why. But I actually have another theory for this. I think the more likely reason is because Iron Man just seems so super to me. Like, I don't think of him as not having superpowers, even though he really doesn't have any powers. How wild is that? Tony Stark is just a super genius of a man who uses his intellect to build unstoppable weapons. This puts him in a league with other insanely iconic individuals from comics like Batman, who is also known for his genius and his resourcefulness. And, his access to usually unlimited resources, as with Bruce and Tony both, money is not usually an obstacle for them. But yeah. Speaking of money not being an obstacle and Batman, of course, this list would not be complete without the most overpowered, non-powered superhero of all time, Batman. Batman is the king of being powerful without needing to rely on any powers at all. Across stories and continuities, he has used his wits, his skills, and strategies to take down giants. He's faced Darkseid and survived. He's fought against Superman and won, or almost won, depending on the story and the continuity that we're talking about and also your interpretation of some of those stories. Batman is just a man, but the plot armor he wears, along with his skill set, his determination, and often his fortune, gives him the ability to take down almost any foe, superpowered or not.
Number 10. Scarecrow. While Scarecrow might not have any powers to speak of, his brilliant mind has granted him lots of tricks and abilities. One of the most well-known tactics of his is to use his fear toxin, which causes those exposed to have vivid hallucinations of their greatest fears. He also has a terrifying appearance and possesses some immunity to various toxins and poisons due to his exposure to chemicals. In the past, he has managed to use his fear toxin to attempt to poison all of Gotham, and has more recently been busy terrorizing those outside of Gotham in Bloodhaven, including Dick Grayson, who he actually came quite close to defeating during his attempt to take over the city of Bloodhaven. Number 9. Black Mask. While Black Mask might not be as popular as some of the others on the list, in some ways I would argue that he is more dangerous, especially when you are dealing with him one-on-one. Black Mask is a twisted sociopath who often tortures his foes who he manages to capture. He's not only played a supervillain to Bruce Wayne's Batman, but he's even become a great supervillain to Batman's sometimes ally, Catwoman. In one story, he's responsible for torturing Selina Kyle's sister Maggie, killing her husband, and forcing her to commit cannibalism by eating him, which ultimately drives Maggie insane. The feud between Black Mask and Catwoman became so intense that she eventually snapped, and even in one story was responsible for killing him. Number 8. Harley Quinn. While Harley Quinn in the comic book world is ever more closer to the title of anti-hero in her new animated series, she set out to prove herself as the baddest bad guy ever, locking her sights on becoming an established member of the Legion of Doom. She wants to prove to not just herself that she can be just as evil and dangerous as the next villain, but also to her ex, the Joker. Harley wants the world to see her for who she is, bad to the core, and in the series she even manages to take on and win against the Joker, leaving Gotham on fire. But actually, with Batman MIA and possibly even presumed dead. Number 7. Bullseye. One of the best shots when it comes to the supervillain crowd. He can fire any weapon and throw anything, even teeth, and not miss. I even think he may have better aim than Hawkeye himself. I know, this is a controversial opinion, but the two are at least on the same level for sure. Bullseye is also completely criminally insane. He kills without remorse and sometimes without even any interest in doing so. He's also the man responsible for killing 2 of Daredevil's loves of his life and has made Daredevil's life a living hell in more ways than just that. In the Netflix series, Kingpin hires this assassin to torment Daredevil just like in the comics. And in the show, Bullseye decides to go on a killing spree dressed as Daredevil to accomplish said task. He even managed to finally kill Matt Murdock during a final showdown with Daredevil in the miniseries End of Days. Number 6. Kingpin. When it comes to the life of Matt Murdock and sometimes the life of other superheroes who get in his way, you can't go bigger than Kingpin. Wilson Fisk is so brilliant, so imposing, and so terrifying that he rules with an iron fist. Not the iron fist, just an iron fist. You know what I mean. And very few dare to cross him. He knew who Daredevil was for the longest time, but chose to keep his identity under wraps. That's how confident Fisk was that he didn't need to leak it in order to ruin Matt's life. In fact, Kingpin managed to figure out a lot of super secret identities, proving how well connected and sharp he is. He also prompted Peter into beating him within an inch of his life when it was revealed that he was the one responsible for an assassination attempt that landed Aunt May in the ICU. Savage. He paid for that one though. He definitely paid for that one. Number 5. Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, depending on how you want to say it. Like Batman, Ra's al Ghul is very much a self-made man. The biggest difference between the two is that Batman attempts to stand for justice, while Ra's al Ghul is a powerful criminal mastermind. In fact, he is one of the few who can rival Batman when it comes to all the skills and training that he has had, as well as his amassed knowledge over the years. Of course, Ra's has a lot more time to work on himself and become so skilled, and this is due to his use of the Lazarus Pits, which has helped him to stay eternally young, heal, and basically be considered immortal through their use. Of course, tons of people, superheroes and villains alike, have used the Lazarus Pits to come back to life or heal themselves throughout comic book history. And while some might think this means he has a superpower, he just has access to the Lazarus Pits. It's not his power. He doesn't own it. I mean, he uses it the most, but other people come through. Number 4, the Red Skull. A villain so evil, even the Joker didn't want to work alongside him during a crossover with Captain America and his sidekick Bucky, and Batman and his sidekick Robin. Johann Smith's appearance might make you think that he has powers, but although he's stolen some powers a few times, for the most part, the most dangerous thing about him is just how evil he really is. His love of violence and murder began a long time ago, back when he was just a young boy in love. Johann was actually born into an abusive household and immediately was almost killed by his father, who attempted to drown him when he was just a newborn. Later in life, Schmidt became a runaway orphan and thief, who was later taken in by a Jewish shop owner. He and his daughter were the first people to really show Johann kindness. In defending them, he committed his first murder, and frustrated when the daughter did not seem to appreciate his help, he repaid their kindness by assaulting her and leaving both her and her father for dead. This was the moment that Johann first realized how very much murdering and causing pain to others brought him joy. And he also realized how much he cared about power. Number 3, Ozymandias. Ozymandias is so skilled that he even makes you think he has superpowers. He's so brilliant, he figured out how to move quickly enough to catch and stop a bullet. Something that has only really been posed as possible in magic shows that pull off the trick using the typical tactics of distraction and sleight of hand, simply making it look like they caught a bullet, while likely they just had a bullet on them the whole time, found a way to make you think that they caught it. But Adrian Veidt is so well studied, he's obviously discovered a way to pull off this trick in real life with real stakes. His superior intellect is what he relies on for everything, and in a sense, the way he manipulates people into doing what he wants almost appears just like a magic trick. He's able to think and plan so far ahead, distract those he targets so well that they never even think to suspect him. And in truth, unless he reveals his plot to you, you'll probably never even know that he was involved in what happened at all. Number 2, Lex Luthor. In his efforts to destroy Superman, Lex has gone to great lengths. He's even successfully campaigned and been elected as President of the United States. Not only that, but his ire for Supes is so strong that it has even extended to the Justice League, as Lex was also the man who put together the Injustice League Unlimited crew, whose main aim was revealed to be world domination through coming together. Unfortunately, the villains weren't as good at working together as their heroic counterparts, and eventually they were defeated. But even then, Lex claimed that he was so brilliant that even the destruction of the Injustice League Unlimited and his capture were all part of his master plan, apparently. Number 1, Joker. Despite not having any powers, Joker remains one of the most iconic and dangerous villains of all time. While not all of his ideas have been winners, all of them have definitely been pretty creative. And while some of the more outlandish plots have flopped, Joker is still known for some of the most dastardly plots in all of comics. In the non-canon story Killing Joke, he was responsible for paralyzing Barbara Gordon in an attempt just to drive her father, Commissioner Gordon, insane. He is basically single-handedly responsible for Superman snapping and losing it in the Injustice universe. He killed Gordon's wife point blank after making her drop her weapon by tossing a baby at her. When Joker was Emperor Joker, he was responsible for devouring and thereby destroying the entire population of China. He killed and tortured various Robins, and some still believe he may have had involvement in the death of Bruce's parents. Joker is one of the most creative and disturbing villains around. He's sadistic, chaotic, and unpredictable, making him an insanely dangerous man to deal with, even when you are on his side.
And it's Connor Hawke. Connor Hawke is the son of Oliver Queen and Sandra Hawke, and takes over the Green Arrow mantle after his father's death. When introduced in Green Arrow Volume 2 Number 0 in 1994, he appeared to just be a huge fan of the Green Arrow, but it was later revealed that unbeknownst to Oliver, Connor was in fact his son. It feels fitting that it's my name, honestly. And while he may have had the same skills as his father, although less evolved, Connor does end up gaining a couple powers over his father. One of them being a healing factor granted him due to genetic mutations, this also giving him a higher resistance to pain, and this also allowed him to stay in his prime with ease, much like Logan. And thanks to Connor's Zen training, he was able to develop a form of clairvoyance. This is the ability that gave him a vision of his father still alive, despite the world thinking that he was dead. But while he didn't have any powers, he was still pretty badass. So see, he has a reason to be on this list other than just sharing my name, okay? Plus, clairvoyance doesn't really count as a superpower. It could just be him like wanting it really hard and then like it just being a thing. So hey, look, at one point he didn't have powers. And then I am Black Widow. Natalia Romanova, aka Black Widow, is a former Russian KGB agent. She was trained by the Red Room as a part of the Black Widow Ops program to be the ultimate super spy. She defected to the United States of America from the Soviet Union to join S.H.I.E.L.D., and later Black Widow would then become a member of the Avengers, and she has been on the team on multiple occasions. She is a woman with a mysterious past which few know about. The exact year and location for the birth of Natasha Romanova is unknown. It has been rumored that Natasha was somehow related to the last ruling Tsars of Russia, but this rumor was never proven. There are varying accounts of Romanova's early life, and this is a part of what makes her so mysterious, but her being mysterious is also part of what makes her such a badass, even without any powers. And it ain't Karate Kid. No, not that Karate Kid. Okay, Mr. Miyagi has nothing over this guy. Karate Kid is actually Val Armour, a superhero from the future and also a member of the Legion of Superheroes. He is a master of every form of martial arts that has been developed by the 30th century. The extent of his skill was so great that he could severely damage various types of hard material with a single blow, and was briefly able to hold his own against Superboy through the use of what he called super karate. So already seeming pretty legit. Val Armour was the son of Japan's greatest crime lord, Kyaru Nezumi, also known as the Black Dragon. When he was born, his mother, the American secret secret agent Valentina Armour tried to hide him from his father, but she failed and was killed for her affront. Japan's biggest hero, Sensei Toshiaki, the White Crane, eventually killed Black Dragon for his crimes and adopted the infant Val. He raised Val as if he were his own son and trained him in all manner of martial arts. Val became the youngest warrior ever to earn the title of samurai, and he went to work for his local shogun. However, after trying his best and failing to please his supervisor, he quit and searched the galaxy for new forms of battle to master. This sounds like a superhero my dad would absolutely love. And in 7th, the Punisher. He's known for his violent methods and his high-tech weapons, including his battle van. And in the 90s Spider-Man animated series, which is of course the one I'm going to be talking about, he works with Chip, who monitors him through his computer. His iconic symbol is a large white skull on his chest. Punisher went to New York City thinking that Spider-Man was behind a string of attacks at Empire State University. Later, he would be convinced of this when Spider-Man mutated into Man-Spider. He was later captured and taken to the parking garage of the World Trade Center, and with the help of Kraven the Hunter and Mariah Crawford, Spider-Man was cured. He later returned and thought that Peter was the Green Goblin and kidnapped Mary Jane Watson, but then he captured Harry Osborn, but just still wanted to know what Peter knew about Mary Jane's disappearance. Just as he was about to ask, Mary Jane's clone appeared, and the Punisher let him go. But I mean, I think we all know the Punisher's pretty damn powerful. Just no morals, man. He'll use lethal force. That was the closest they got to saying kill in that show. Lethal force. From the Punisher. That's it. And at 6, Nightwing. Dick Grayson is a vigilante in the Batman family and the original hero known as Robin. Eventually, he outgrew this position because, you know, he was an adult and was inspired by Superman to become Nightwing, while Jason Todd and Tim Drake succeeded him as Robin. Following the disappearance of Bruce Wayne, he succeeded his own mentor to become Batman with Damian Wayne as his Robin. Bruce's return allowed them both to wear the mantle for a short while, although Grayson has since returned to his identity as Nightwing. Very briefly, Dick had considered giving up the whole crime fighting gig, but he couldn't imagine his life any other way. But if he couldn't be Robin, who would he be? Superman had the answer. Long ago on Krypton, a man was cast out by his family, just as Dick had been. He dreamed of a world ruled by justice and set out to protect the helpless of Krypton. His true identity was never revealed, and he was only known as Nightwing. The post-crisis version of Grayson had him also become the first and only Nightwing, with his costume partially inspired by his father. Halfway through, and at number 5, Moon Knight. Mark Spector is better known as the vigilante Moon Knight. Once a mercenary, Mark Spector was left for dead in a desert, where he was revived by the moon god Khonshu. Appointed as Khonshu's fist and high priest, Moon Knight enacts justice to protect those who travel at night. Spectre also suffers from dissociative identity disorder, also known as DID, which has paved the way for use of other identities, including millionaire Stephen Grant and cab driver Jake Lockley. Since the early days, Mark has mostly worked alone, but he's also been a member of a few superhero teams, including the Avengers and Heroes for Hire. As a mercenary, I kinda understand that one. Recently, Mark discovered that he had a daughter named Beatrice with a longtime lover Marlene Arlone. But when Khonshu sensed Mephisto's plans for world domination, Mark left her to fight by his god's side and prevent that from coming true. When Khonshu succumbed to his madness, however, Mark had to turn against him and help the Avengers defeat him. And at 4, Green Arrow. Be it the comic version or the CW version, Green Arrow is one badass mamma jamma, and you're welcome, editor, for not making you censor motherfucker. And ignoring the whole Spectre or anytime he has a lantern ring thing, this guy is wicked skilled. Like, sorry Hawkeye, but there's a reason that Black Widow got the movie and you got a limited Disney Plus series. With his seemingly limitless supply of trick arrows, GA is really able to best anyone who comes his way, including the Monitor in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover from the CW. Since then, he uses an antimatter arrow to stun him in order to keep fighting off shadow demons so that 3.1 billion additional people could be saved from Earth 38 before its destruction. Plus, we love a hero who was stranded on a deserted island for 5 years that causes him to turn from a billionaire playboy head to a superhero. Maybe to become a superhero, I need a yacht as well. Although mine would be called the King's Gambit, and we'd play checkers, not chess. I also wouldn't bring my girlfriend's sister on board. Mostly because she doesn't have a sister, and because I don't have a girlfriend. But if I had a yacht, I'm sure I would have one. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Daredevil. Daredevil's life is a mix of joy and tragedy. The story of Matt Murdock began with his father, Jonathan, battling Jack Murdock, who raised his sons, Matt and Mike, alone, claiming Matt's mother had died. Jack wanted his sons to be more successful than him. He impressed upon Matt that he needed to constantly study instead of playing sports with the other kids. Jack had hoped that Matt would become a doctor or a lawyer instead of a uneducated pug like himself. Don't hate on pugs. Just say pig. This led the neighborhood kids to bully the cowardly Matt as Daredevil, while his twin brother came to his aid. Matt took out his frustrations by secretly training in his father's gym. But one day, Matt saw a blind man walking towards an oncoming truck. Matt pushed the man out of the way, but the truck crashed and a radioactive isotope spilled out, striking Matt across the face and blinding him. While recovering in the hospital, Matt discovered that his hearing, smell, taste, and touch were amplified to superhuman degrees. He also developed a sort of radar sense that formed mental pictures of his surroundings. So while he may have heightened senses, he does not have superpowers, okay? He just has a really acute sense of everything but sight, okay? I don't consider that a superpower. That just happens whenever you have to like get rid of one of your senses. If you don't have sight, I feel like your other senses would have to be heightened, just as like a response, like a survival instinct of sorts. Penultimately, in at number 2, Batman. I think we all knew that Batman was going to be on this list, but I'm guessing most of you figured he'd be number 1. And while I can't deny Batman is badass, I can honestly say that I think he's kind of overpowered. Like, it doesn't matter if he's rich. There should be no possible way that he can get whatever he wants whenever he needs it, okay? Like, the best ability that Batman has is plot armor. Not his money or his martial arts mastery or being the world's greatest detective. He can get whatever the story needs or whatever he needs just so he doesn't die, because killing him off would be a horrible idea, money-wise. Like, oh no, Superman's gone bad, but there's only 1 ounce of kryptonite left in this Earth, and it's literally in the core of the Earth, surrounded by molten magma. But he can get it because he's rich. Like, I don't like that. I don't like that. My friend was obsessed with Batman, but honestly, I think he's overrated. And I can hear the sounds of pitchforks and torches being lighted in the comments. Come at me. Batman isn't all that, and that's why he's number 2. He's also number 2 because of the plot armor. That is his ultimate ability, and that's why he's higher on the list. Finally, in at number 1, Iron Man. A wealthy American business magnate, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, inventor, and ingenious scientist, Anthony Edward Tony Stark suffers a severe chest injury during a kidnapping. When his captors attempt to force him to build a weapon of mass destruction, he instead creates a mechanized suit of armor to save his life and escape captivity. Later, Stark developed his suit, adding weapons and other technological devices he designed through his company, Stark Industries. He used his suit and the successive versions of it to protect the world as Iron Man. Although first concealing his true identity, Stark eventually publicly reveals himself to be Iron Man. Initially, Iron Man was a vehicle for Stan Lee to explore Cold War themes, particularly the role of American technology and industry in the fight against communism. Subsequent reimaginings of Iron Man have transitioned from Cold War motifs to contemporary matters of time. Plus, his suits are awesome and way cooler than Batman. That's right, I said it.
Number 10, Dr. Von Doom. Yes, of course, you are right. Dr. Von Doom possesses magical abilities, but these weren't really used or incorporated into the comics until the early 2000s. So for this list, I want to focus on Dr. Von Doom as an intellect and scientist, non-powered. Before he was using magic in the comics, he managed to actually kidnap the Purple Man and, using mind control, rule the world. The Purple Man actually tried to cause Doom to kill himself, but his will was too strong, and he was able to withstand the Purple Man's influence, which, as the Purple Man even said, was nuts, as no one had been able to do that before. What? He also often ends up being a pretty decent leader when it comes to global domination of any sorts in the comics, which makes him a really interesting and complex supervillain, one that you sometimes can't help but root for. He also almost defeated the Fantastic Four in Annual 2 of Volume 1 of their self-titled series, using some kind of poison berry juice that he had them drink at what they thought was a peacemaking dinner. He caused them to battle and almost destroy one another. With Dr. Doom, the proof is in the juice. Number 9. Bullseye. Bullseye's story and name are kind of a mystery, as they have been retconned many times in the comics. There have been backstories for him that have involved him murdering his abusive father, setting his childhood home ablaze as a youth, that his story is nothing interesting, but that his mother was a prostitute. I don't know. What we do know is that Bullseye is a crack shot with just about anything, including playing cards. He works as a mercenary and freelance assassin, and even once teamed up with Deadpool. Yep. Bullseye is often presented as a nemesis and thorn in the side of Daredevil. He even managed to kill Elektra using his playing cards to slit her throat in Daredevil Volume 2, Issue 181. And she isn't the only one of Daredevil's girlfriends to have met her end at the hands of Bullseye. Nope. His iconic Bullseye scar was actually given to him in revenge by Daredevil later on in Volume 3, Issue 49 of the series, after Bullseye threatened his current girlfriend at the time, Mila. Number 8. Harley Quinn. Though some may simply think of Harley as a sidekick to the Joker or partner to Poison Ivy, since the New 52, and in some instances even before that, she has really come into her own. Harley Quinn was created originally to simply be Joker's sidekick and girlfriend, who was blindly, madly in love with him in the Batman animated series. From there, her character astounded even her creators as they watched her popularity soar
power with DC fans, and she ended up also making her way into the comics. Harley has no real powers, which is amazing considering all that she has accomplished. As she is, or was, a doctor, often presented as a psychiatrist who fell in love with the Joker during his time at Arkham Asylum, she is quite brilliant, but she's also quite mad, which, like the Joker, usually works to her advantage, simply making her more dangerous and deranged when it comes to her criminal tactics. Typically armed with her oversized mallet, she has taken on many of the goody-goodies of the DC world, even once hitting Supergirl through a window with her mallet. She has been shown in the animated series and comics successfully capturing Batman, murdering the children of Gotham via free video games given to them — never trust a deal that is too good to be true, my friends — and has even been a successful deranged serial killer with a basement full of body parts. Next level madness with Harley. Number 7. Norman Osborn. So granted, Norman Osborn is also the Green Goblin who, due to the serum he ingested, sort of has superpowers, but I really do mean sort of. While the serum enhanced his intellect somewhat, he was already super smart, so as I see, the serum really did more harm to Osborn than it did good. Mostly it just made him crazy and even more obsessive than he already was. When talking about Norman Osborn as a villain, what I think most people focus on is his intellect, his creativity as a villain, and his wealth. Known as one of Spider-Man's main arch nemeses, he has gone to great lengths to cause hurt to Peter Parker. Never mind all the times he's attempted to kill Peter. Remember when he bought the Daily Bugle and put a $5 million bounty on Spider-Man's head? He has also used his wits to hurt Peter and to terrorize those closest to him, constantly putting Aunt May in harm's way, as well as MJ. And remember that time he impregnated Gwen Stacy? Just ugh. Number 6. Black Mask. You may recognize Black Mask from the Batman War Games comic, which was a Batman family crossover event in 2004. Though Black Mask has been a Batman villain since the 80s, his real name is Roman Sionis. Born into wealth, his parents cared more for their social standing than they did him, leading him to receive brain damage as an infant. After his parents died, he inherited the family business, which went bankrupt under his management, and was bought out by Wayne Enterprises. He was later struck by lightning and flung into a grave, which Roman took as a sign of rebirth, which is interesting. If lightning tossed me into a grave, I feel like I'd be more inclined to interpret it as, you know, a sign of death. He fashioned an ebony mask out of his father's casket and swore revenge on Wayne Enterprises, which obviously put him into direct conflict with the Batman. In the events of War Games, we saw him take over Gotham City and torture and kill Stephanie Brown, who had been Batman's most recent Robin at the time. He is a sicko to be reckoned with for sure. As before the events of War Games, we actually see him in Catwoman Volume 3, Issue 16, torturing Catwoman's sister. He kidnapped her, killed her husband in front of her, and then forced her to eat him. Yeah, he crazy. Number 5. Kingpin. Another Daredevil villain, Kingpin is the crime boss to pretty much end all crime bosses. Not gonna lie, would love to see him and Black Mask duke it out over something. Both are ruthless and twisted. Kingpin was actually introduced in the comics in the Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Issue 50. He has been an overarching villain for Spidey throughout the years, which is why I'm sure it didn't surprise many when he played the role of the big bad in Into the Spider-Verse. But this villain really came into his own when Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli teamed up to bring us the Daredevil story arc Born Again in the 80s. This story arc saw him completely destroy Matt Murdock's life, taking away his home, his finances, and leaving him with his costume in tatters after getting a hold of Daredevil's secret identity. As you also know, he's a huge Daredevil villain. Spoilers. Number 4. Mysterio. Even Mysterio's introduction was traumatic for Spider-Man. Quentin Beck was introduced to us in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Issue 13, where he committed crimes under Spider-Man's guise that were so convincing, he actually made Peter Parker think he had a split personality, right off the bat causing Peter to question himself. As in the MCU's Far From Home, in the comics, Beck is a skilled VFX artist who uses his know-how to trick Spider-Man and often causes him to question reality. To be honest, the made-up backstory he had in Far From Home almost had me convinced, so I can imagine how hard of a villain he is to deal with for Parker. He also has played villain to Daredevil in the Guardian Devil storyline, where he did a slew of terrible things to Murdock, including injecting him with a serum that made Daredevil more violent, making his girlfriend Karen think she had a terminal illness, and hiring Bullseye to assassinate him.
Like Bullseye needs any convincing.
Number 3. Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock is considered one of the greatest villains when it comes to the Spider-Man comics, and for good reason. Doc Ock is a man who solely relies on his intelligence and his self-made gadgets to get things done, and he has used his smarts to torture Spider-Man since he was first introduced as a villain in the original Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Issue number 3. His dastardly plots have included him marrying Aunt May just to get a plot of land she'd inherited with a uranium deposit, and swapping bodies with Peter, leaving him to die in his old, failing body when he adopted the mantle of Superior Spider-Man. In the PS4 game, we get to tragically watch his transformation from brilliant mind to diabolical villain in a plot involving him creating and using a bioweapon on the city of New York and killing thousands of people. Number 2. Lex Luthor. Known as being one of the most brilliant supervillains in comic book history, Lex Luthor is Superman's greatest foe. Luthor's hatred for Superman has always fueled him and many of his plots, and he has cited many reasons as to why he hates the Man of Steel, including but not limited to blaming Kal-El for his hair loss. Yeah. Even when his plots involve becoming elected president of the United States and seemingly making the world a better place, the real objective of any of his plots seems to be to overthrow the former Boy Scout Superman. When he was president, he did so by making both Superman and Batman public enemies, and he's even gone so far as to found the Injustice League, comprised of Justice League members' nemesis, in an attempt to get rid of Kal-El. Luthor is such a brilliant and diabolical man that he has even succeeded in killing Superman, not just once, but twice, both in The Death of Superman and All-Star Superman. Number 1. The Joker. You've heard me say that Joker was my favorite villain before, and for good reason. He is also one of the most famous supervillains in comic book history, one of the most thought of when it comes to fabricating any kind of list in your mind of the greats. And even without any superpowers before, he has earned this through his sheer mad ingenuity. The crazy thing about the Joker is if Batman wanted to, he could just kill him, but in killing him, he would basically be admitting defeat. So either way, the Joker wins. The Joker is also responsible for some of the most vile deeds ever committed in the comics, and through it all has very limited attachment to those deeds or the people that he has hurt. Any time his past is delved into, it turns out to be false or not canon, retconned, or just a fabricated lie, making him one of the most mysterious characters in comics. The Joker has been responsible for paralyzing Barbara Gordon, killing Jason Todd, sort of, and numerous others in the comics, including but not limited to a school full of children. Every reincarnation we see of this character is always darker than the last, and more often than not, non-powered. In the Injustice Fighting Games World Story Mode, his character causes Superman to kill Lois Lane and their unborn child by tricking him into thinking that she was Doomsday. Dark. Number 10. Punchline. While Punchline might be new on the scene, she did go toe-to-toe with Harley Quinn, herself known for being a pretty deadly and unstoppable villain when she wants to be, and, surprisingly, came out on top. Punchline sliced Harley Quinn's throat and then left her for dead in the sewers below Gotham during Joker War, but of course, Harley would recover. Still, Punchline's victory was surprising for her being such a new and unseasoned character and baddie, so I think we learned then that she is a force to be reckoned with. Punchline seems to enjoy fighting with stiletto daggers and dreaming up her own deadly brews of poison, even creating her own special brew of Joker venom for Batman, which gave him a pretty bad trip. Number 9. Komodo. Simon LaCroix is a powerful villain in terms of his importance and what he's accomplished. Simon was a young man full of ambition when he came to work at Queen Industries. Impressed to Robert, Simon was like the son he'd always wanted. Oliver at the time was still pretty shallow and unfocused, unlike Simon. Simon joined Robert on an expedition to find the Arrow Clan totem. The totem was said to bring enlightenment to those who found it. Wanting such a reward for himself though, Simon betrayed Robert, killing him in cold blood. Simon would go on to become one of the most skilled archers the world over, despite even being blind in one eye. And despite him even being blind in one eye, he's pretty much like as good as Oliver is, maybe even better, at least on the same level, which is pretty crazy. As a deadly assassin, he would take up the codename of Komodo. Number 8. Chameleon. Chameleon might have been given powers later on in life thanks to serums and body modifications, but originally he was just a guy who was really good at disguises, and for that reason, he's making our cut. Chameleon is the first ever Spider-Man villain to appear, appearing in issue number 1 of the Spider-Man series. In that first issue, Chameleon attempts to disguise himself as Spider-Man Spider-Man while committing crimes, in essence ruining Spider-Man's possibly already shaky reputation as a hero. Despite the fact that Chameleon is really just a master of disguise, he still manages to be a powerful recurring villain for Spider-Man, at one point using his skills to take part in a plot where he convinced Peter that his parents were still alive with realistic robots, who then tried to kill Peter. It was pretty wild. Number 7. Two-Face. Of course, many of the villains on this list are going to be Batman villains. I mean, Batman is one of the most famous superheroes without superpowers himself, so of course it stands to reason that his own foes tend to also be on the same level and are generally also not superpowered. Harvey Dent has to be one of the most deadly foes of Batman around. In many narratives, Harvey Dent is established as an old friend of Bruce's with altruistic goals, often known for being the district attorney of Gotham, attempting to bring various criminals to justice and end corruption that exists within the system. But after he is disfigured, he becomes the evil and sometimes chaotic Two-Face. Number 6. Kingpin. Kingpin is a fearsome foe that you'd want to watch out for. Although Wilson Fisk has an intimidating form and presence though, he doesn't have superpowers. And while physically he can present as a pretty deadly opponent, you'd actually want to watch out for his tactical and diplomatic skills in a weird way. Fisk is strong both in body and mind, and is quite learned when it comes to leadership and tactics, which is really what makes him so scary. Kingpin believed from a young age that politics were where true power lie, and so studied rigorously to learn how he might be able to sway others in doing what he wanted and making those around him believe in him. I mean, he didn't become the mayor of New York just by bullying people, he actually made the people of New York believe he'd be a good mayor, which was how he earned that position. Like, that was a fair election. They literally voted for a supervillain to become the mayor because he proved himself as a kind of good dude. Number 5. Lady Shiva. Lady Shiva is an unstoppable force. She is believed to be possibly one of the best martial artists in the world. She was trained by the League of Assassins after already being a formidable foe before that even happened. At least, that's what she was up to in the New Earth continuity. Well, in that continuity, Lady Shiva is a sometimes villain against and sometimes ally to heroes. In the Prime Earth continuity, she's pretty much all bad, at least so far. She was taken in by David Kane, who wanted her to become the mother of his child, a child who would be perfect for serving the head of the League of Assassins, Ra's al Ghul. This would make her the daughter of Cassandra Cain, who is sometimes known as Batgirl. Number 4. Dr. Octopus. Dr. Octopus might be someone you think of as having powers due to his mechanical tentacles, but in actuality, he created those. They aren't actually inherent superpowers granted to him by, a freak accident or from him being from another world. Really, Otto Octavius's greatest gift is his brilliant mind, and typically what you'd want to watch out for more is his ability to outsmart you. I know some Spidey fans are going to wonder where Norman Osborn is on this list, aka Green Goblin, another notorious Spider-Man villain, who perhaps is oft thought of more as Peter Parker's main arch nemesis. But the reality is, while both Norman and Otto are brilliant people and their minds are some of the most dangerous things about them, Norman Osborn has the Goblin Serum, which actually does give him powers, while also making him kinda crazy. While Otto has no such thing, just technological advancements that he himself created. Although in some versions of the story, his tentacles also alter his mind and are kinda what turn him into a villain to begin with. Number 3. Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is the arch nemesis of Superman, ironically considered to be one of the most powerful of the DC heroes. Ironic because Lex himself does not have any superpowers to speak of, but is just a man. Although sometimes he's a man in like a really sick suit of armor, so that's kind of powers, but he made it, so not powers. And if we're to believe some versions of the tale, Lex is also a man who hates Superman because he blames him for his hair loss. Although in reality, Lex's hatred for Superman extends far beyond that. Another main idea that Lex seems to fixate around when it comes to his hatred of Superman in canon is that Superman is not of this world. And that's the more widely accepted reason why Lex doesn't like Superman. Something that makes Lex so dangerous is he can actually be quite likable. At one point, he was even elected president of the United States. Lex is extremely wealthy and also typically uses his money to actually help those less fortunate, which of course makes him a hard person to come up against because on paper he might not initially seem so bad. But behind the scenes he's usually doing super shady things. Let's be real. Number 2. The Joker. The Joker is evidently one of the most deadly and powerful people on this list because of the way his mind works. While he might not be as inherently brilliant as a lot of the other folks without powers, Joker's mind is at the very least quite unique, and it's his creativity that really makes him so horrifying. Also, while Joker might not have powers by default, he does sometimes devise diabolical plans to get his hands on some powers, or on some form of power at least. During Joker War, Joker swindled Batman out of of his fortune, and all that money came with a kind of power, as Joker could pretty much do whatever he wanted, as long as it had some kind of price tag attached to it, which honestly most things in the world do, so dangerous. This also allowed him to manipulate the people of Gotham as well. Another time he actually tricked Mr. Mxyzptlk into giving him 99.99% of his power. Number 1. Ozymandias. Ozymandias is the main villain of the Watchmen series, despite himself being a self-proclaimed hero. Adrian Veidt might claim to be a superhero, but he doesn't have any real superpowers, he's just got a brilliant intellect. Although to be fair, that is one of the deadliest things you can possess as a villain. Adrian might also have a diabolical plan, but he still sees himself as a hero, which makes him even more dangerous really. He believes that in endangering the world and killing millions, he'd actually be saving it, as he'd give people a universal threat to unite them. Ozymandias believes one of the greatest threats to humankind is themselves, and the risk of a nuclear war basically breaking out. So he does some unspeakable things in an attempt to protect them from their own most likely future: division. What makes him so powerful is even the heroes have a hard time arguing against his points once this truth is revealed. They're like, well, true, people are very divided and they could just hurt themselves and all die, so maybe we should kill millions of people. Maybe that is the way. Number 10. Huntress. Not only do we get to see how powerful Helena Bertinelli was in the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey film, but even in the comics, she is known as being a force to be reckoned with. Huntress is Helena Bertinelli, the daughter and sole surviving member of the famous mob family in Gotham, who is known for becoming a vigilante in order to get revenge on the people who murdered her family. She has not only bested Batgirl aka Barbara Gordon in combat before, but she even once fought against Lady Shiva and managed to hold her own. She didn't win, of course, she got her butt whooped, but she never gave up, and because of this she earned the respect of Lady Shiva, who gave her the name Iron Owl for her resilience. She bled so much, but then she was like, I'm gonna spit my blood on you. Plah. Lady Shiva was like, ugh, gross. Alright, stop fighting me. You're nasty. That's not what happened, but that would be funny if that is what happened. Number 9. Hit Girl. Coming at us from Mark Millar's and John Romita Jr.'s series Kick-Ass, which has been published by both Marvel's imprint Icon Comics and Image Comics, we have Hit Girl. Mindy McCready is Hit Girl, a brutal hero who, despite appearances, is frightfully mighty and scary. She is out to avenge the death of her mother, at least that's what she believes she's been trained for, by her mentor and fellow vigilante as well as father, Big Daddy. A ruthless killer and trained fighter, Hit Girl is not someone that you'd want to mess with. She's been shown to get shot multiple times and still manage to get back up and continue to kick. Pun intended there. And she's only 12 and 1/4 years old. What is it with young heroes that can kick all of our butts? It's probably because, you know, they're young, so they're like, we're spry. Number 8. Nightwing. Nightwing is Dick Grayson. He is the first and possibly, to some, best Robin that Batman ever had. He is also often known as the leader of the Teen Titans. Trained by Batman himself, Nightwing is an insanely skilled fighter, and his physique is off the charts, making you often question what could be considered within the realm of human with his astounding feats. Dick has even taken up the mantle of Batman before, temporarily when Batman was suspected to be dead. He's managed to temporarily knock down Cassandra Cain, somehow managing to catch her off guard. Insanely hard to do considering how well she could read people, like that's literally what she was trained for. And even managed to pull a Bane over on Bane, attempting to break Bane's back over his own knee. Youch. Number 7. War Machine. Not all superheroes need brute strength to be strong. Some simply need a cool suit of armor. When looking at the Iron Man family, that's a common trait that you'll notice. This teched out squad of supers often uses tech and training to defeat their foes. James Rhodes, fondly known as Rhodey, is a skilled and seasoned pilot known for being one of, if not the, best friend of Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. As such, he ended up being gifted a suit of armor from Stark, thus starting a career as a hero himself. He's bested Thor in a fight, single-handedly defeated a fleet of invading Skrulls, incapacitated Ares, and constantly manages to put himself back into situations that have given him PTSD, just so he can continue being the hero that he wants to be. Wow. Number 6. Daredevil. The son of famed boxer Battling Jack Murdoch, this vigilante, who usually sticks to his own neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen, was blinded at a young age. Originally, he appeared to have received superpowers as a result of the accident that blinded him, granting him super strength and endurance, and enhanced senses. But this would later be retconned in Frank Miller's Man Without Fear, where instead Daredevil would be posed as a hero who simply had enhanced senses, probably due to being blind. although some people still think of them as superpowers. And he was trained by master martial artist Stick, who also happened to be blind. And that's how he got all his super strength sort of skills. Super strength. And that's how he became such a skilled fighter. He's been shown to be strong enough to literally rip demons apart, crack concrete with a single punch, escape metal bindings, and has even taken on the Hulk in a 1v1 fight. Wow. Pretty impressive for someone who doesn't really have superpowers. He's also known for being one of the toughest superheroes around, with or without powers. But mainly without. Number 5. Damian Wayne. Damian is the son of Bruce Wayne and Talia al Ghul. From a young age he was trained by the League of Assassins before being dropped by Talia on Bruce's doorstep, where Talia informed Bruce that Damian was his son and he would now be responsible for looking after him. Thanks for that, Talia. Batman then took it upon himself to train Damian, attempting to rehabilitate his son and rid him of his murderous tendencies, of which he had many. Both the light and the dark sides of Damian make him a powerful and deadly vigilante in regards to his role as Robin. This is a kid who has beat people comatose, and that's when he's holding back, and who defeated his own mother, a supremely skilled assassin, in combat at the age of 10. Number 4. Cassandra Cain. Cassandra Cain is one of the few superheroes to have earned the mantle of Batgirl, but before her time as part of the Bat family, she lived with her father and the League of Assassins. Her father was David Cain and her mother was Lady Shiva. Yeah, Lady Shiva, who simply gave birth to Cassandra in exchange for her life and training that would make her stronger. David raised Cassandra to speak only through body language and taught her to be a skilled assassin. She was so young when she had her first kill that she thought it was all a game. Her dad's training regimen for her was harsh and intense. It even involved him shooting his daughter point blank in the back to apparently keep her on her toes? The scary part is that Cassandra didn't even flinch when she was being shot. She was like, this is great. What? Girl's crazy. Love her though, but crazy. Number 3. Ninjak. Ninjak comes to us from Valiant Comics. He is part spy and part ninja, and in regards to his alias, part British aristocrat. When it comes to his alter ego, he is known as Colin King. He's not only skilled when it comes to speed and agility, but also demonstrates a great sense of endurance and strength, as well as an impossible level of stealth. He managed to stab the most powerful psionic likely in all of the Valiant verse, Toyo Harada, before he could even react. And Toyo Harada is known for his insanely fast reaction time. He has single-handedly been shown to defeat rooms full of armed mercenaries and skilled ninjas, and while allowing himself to take a beating, he's even mused how easy it would be for him to snap every one of his assailants' necks before they'd even have enough time to realize what was happening to them. Overall, he's just deadly. Number 2. Iron Man. Tony Stark is known for being one of the biggest and baddest supers in the Marvel Universe. Seriously, he's turned evil more than once. In regards to his strength, a lot of his power comes from his Iron Man suits, which have evolved over the years to be insanely OP, basically evolving with him. But along with this, it's really Stark's intellect that makes him so strong without any powers. His smarts allow him to build his suits and have even allowed him to integrate some tech within himself physically, making him even stronger. Number 1. Batman. The ultimate non-powered superhero. There is very little that Batman can't do. He is known as a master detective, master martial artist and combatant, a weapons specialist, master of shadows and stealth, an insanely skilled driver, pilot, captain. I mean, is there any vehicle type he hasn't mastered? Is there anything he can't do? He can apparently also bench press 1,000 pounds, which by the way is more than our current world record amount by a couple hundred. Batman without a doubt has to be one of the most overpowered superheroes of all time, even without having any superpowers.